Were you there during the whole shooting?
I was there through the whole thing. And that was one of the agreements that the director and I made when we first ventured out to make this thing. Was we shook hands and said we do this together. And that was very honorable of Luis too, because for the most part in Hollywood, writers are not really seen as the most important element, which is really weird because without the writing there's nothing else.
It's a story.
Yeah, there's nothing. But once the script is done, the writer is done. And it didn't happen in this case because Luis wanted to tell the truest story possible, and he wanted to actually capture the reality of what it really was to grow up like that. And for that he needed my memories, and he needed, because on set we had to improvise a lot, because all of a sudden, although I had thought about it in writing, when I saw it acted out and I said, no, wait, that's not how we set up the mattresses, it was this way. And then the one thing that did for the people who watched it, especially people that did live the war in El Salvador, was the comment we got the most was, you've told our story. You told my story too. And it's a thing of a really feeling of gratefulness from their end and gratefulness from my end. But that was necessary. But for that, I had to be present, and I had to expose myself to whatever I was going to feel at the moment and the intensity of it.
What did you do to prepare for that? Did you do anything to think, okay, wow, I'm going to see this acted out as my experience as a 10-year-old boy here? Did you do anything to prepare for the filming, to watch?
I don't know.
Or was it just so fast?
You don't really expect it. You don't know that that's going to happen. I mean, if I knew, I would have probably not showed up. If I would have been, a little bit more smarter, I would have stayed home. But I'm happy that I was there, because it really pushed me to face my biggest demons. And the things that were hurting my life the most were the things that I wasn't even capable of seeing until I was there, until I was in front of those actors, and we were recreating those scenes, and until I was watching the woman who played my mother behind that sewing machine and watching her work at night while we slept. It was like stepping out of my body and then seeing her, appreciating my mother even more, appreciating the women of Latin America even more, my grandmother, and really seeing the hardship that we were faced with, but also the courage and the valor that we all showed in our own innocent way, and then recreating the games that helped maybe save some lives. I don't know, maybe saved ourselves emotionally, because in order to survive, children tend to create games and to save that innocence.
Yeah, that's something that really struck me. The scenes with the kites. Are they called kites? Those fire.
Oh, those things, the firefly. Well, we call them the paper fireflies, but yeah, I forgot what they call them in El Salvador.
But so you see, like, in him playing with the radio and dancing around. So you see this child who wants to be a child, but he's also being told that he needs to be a man. He needs to, choose. Is he gonna, he's got to make some, decisions that are difficult for adults to make, let alone, a child.
Right.
And I think you've captured that so well. And I think this is part of one of the many beautiful things about the film, but that brings up a lot of discussion, like how can children try to maintain their childhood in the middle of war?
Right.
So I thought that's something you captured really well. Can you tell me a little bit about how did you go to the opening of the film, or where were you when the film was opened? Was it in El Salvador? Was it in LA? Where did you go for the opening of the film?
The very first opening was in El Salvador. We decided that very consciously because Luis wanted to honor the people of El Salvador, and the essence of this film, as he always called it, was Salvadorian. Even though it was a Mexican production, the essence of it is a story from El Salvador, about the people of El Salvador during that time in El Salvador. So we wanted to honor that, and the first movie, the first country to premiere was El Salvador, and then a month later, that was December 2004, and in January 2005 it was Mexico. So it was an amazing experience in El Salvador because the people embraced the film. I mean, they flooded the theaters, and it stayed in the theaters for about 3 months, and it became the #1 movie there, and at the time. And we were beating out all the American productions, which was also a nice accomplishment. But it was because people were really connecting to the film and truly seeing, even though there were things that we couldn't capture about the Salvadoran experience, like the accent, because we were faced with the impossibility of making the kids act well and speak Salvadorian at the same time. We decided to go for the acting instead, so we had to compromise on that. But besides that kind of those kind of elements, the people really embraced it as their own in El Salvador. And and the one thing was El Salvador, and the other part, the antagonist was the government, because the government turned their backs on us, and they actually, first they tried to ban the film, and then Fox, who distributed the film there, said, if you don't play this film there, we're going to pull all of our movies from El Salvador. And Fox is the biggest distributor in El Salvador and most Central America. And then they said, fine, but we're going to give it an R-rated. And then the ironic thing,
R-rated?
yeah,
okay.
the ironic thing about that it was that at the same time in Japan, the film was given a G-rated, general audiences, like an animation film. And not only that, even further, the government of Japan gives 2 stamps per year to 2 movies that they recommend for educational purposes. And Innocent Voices got one of the stamps that year. So at the same time that my country was banning this film and then stamping it with an R-rated, basically trying to keep the kids out, and then there was a protest by the people, and then they brought it down to to B15, so 15 and over could go, which makes it made no difference, because at the end of the day, the people who couldn't see it in the movies, they bought it on the street, pirated anyway. So people find a way to see the movie, which was our purpose anyway from the very beginning. So the seeing the people embrace the film and seeing the government turn their backs. Like at the premiere, for example, it was like this amazing experience where after the movie was ended and everyone was in tears and everyone got up and was clapping and screaming, and it was like a small little protest inside of the theater, just and then some people started chanting FMLN and all that, because everyone had their own feelings. And then the band who originally sang the song Casas de Cartón, which is the reason why I even started writing this, were there. Ironically enough, they were there for a concert in El Salvador. They played for us at the end the song a cappella, and my uncle, who used to sing that song when he was young, ended up standing next to them singing the song along with them. It was like a dream come true for a lot of us.
Goosebumps.
But in the process, 10 different people from the government that came literally got up from where they were sitting, and they went down the stairs, and they were all folded, their arms folded in protest that they were not participating. And then we learned after that as we did the promotion in the United States, the government had issued a letter to all the embassies and asking them not to sponsor the film, because we found it really absurd that in every city we went to, from Boston to New York it was always the Mexican embassy that was sponsoring the presentations, and no one from El Salvador would ever show up, and no one was sponsored. So one ambassador actually told us that he had learned that there was a letter issued from the Salvadoran government to all their ambassadors to not sponsor this film. So it was that kind of a reaction, and it was amazing for me to see the difference and how the mentality of war was still very present in my country 20 years later.